Welcome. Welcome to this quiet journey through time, where we will drift slowly, very slowly, back into the cold depths of medieval winter, a time when snow fell heavy upon stone castles, when frost crept through every crack, and when survival itself was the greatest challenge of all. Close your eyes now, breathe deeply, and imagine yourself transported back through the centuries, back to the year 1347, to a winter so cold, so unforgiving, that even the bravest knights struggled simply to survive each day. Let your body relax. Sink deeper into your bed as we explore together why you, a modern person, would not survive, could not survive the brutal medieval winter that these knights endured. Day after long day, night after frozen night, the wind howls softly outside. Can you hear it? That distant sound of winter arriving, creeping across the European countryside, bringing with it cold beyond your understanding, hardship beyond your experience, and dangers, so many dangers, that would claim your life long before spring returned. Breathe slowly now, in and out, as we begin our journey through one complete day, one ordinary winter day, in the life of a medieval knight in 14th century Europe, where winter was not merely a season, but a test of survival itself. Let us drift back, further and further, into that cold, dark, distant past. The morning begins so slowly, in the depths of winter darkness, for dawn comes late, very late, in these frozen months, and you awaken, not to an alarm, not to gentle light, but to the bitter cold, seeping through every stone, every timber, every thread of your rough woolen blanket. You lie there, in your chamber, within the castle walls, and already you feel it, that deep penetrating cold, that reaches into your very bones. The stone walls around you, thick though they are, offer little warmth, little comfort, for medieval castles were not built for comfort. They were built for defense, and defense alone. Your chamber is small, perhaps 12 feet square, with walls of cold gray stone, moisture glistening upon them, frost forming in the corners, where the weak winter light never quite reaches. The floor beneath you is also stone, covered perhaps with rushes, dried grasses and herbs, meant to provide some insulation, but damp now, always damp, from the moisture that rises from below, from everywhere above you. Rough wooden beams support the ceiling, and you can see your breath. White clouds forming, dissipating, forming again, with each slow exhalation. This is normal. This is every morning, throughout the long winter months, from November, through December, through January and February, sometimes into March, and even April. The bed beneath you is not comfortable, not by any modern standard. It consists of a wooden frame, rope supports, and a mattress stuffed with straw, or if you are fortunate, with wool. But this wool has grown lumpy, uneven, after months of use, and the ropes have stretched, creating valleys and hills that make restful sleep nearly impossible. Your blankets are heavy wool, scratchy against your skin, and they smell that distinctive odor of lanolin and smoke and human sweat, for they are rarely washed. Water is too precious in winter, fuel for heating water even more precious, and so the blankets accumulate. The smells of weeks, of months, of entire winters past. You would not survive this. not even the morning awakening. For you are accustomed to central heating, to thermostats set at 70 degrees, to electric blankets and soft mattresses. And here there is none of that. None of it at all. The cold you feel now, in this moment of waking, is perhaps 40 degrees. Inside your chamber, 40 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 4 degrees Celsius. And this is considered relatively comfortable. For winter, some chambers are colder, much colder, approaching freezing, even with tapestries hung upon the walls, even with shutters closed tight. Against the wind, listen now, to the sounds of morning, distant and muffled. The wind outside, howling softly, constantly, pushing against the wooden shutters that cover the narrow window slits. You can hear the creaking of timber, the settling of stone, and somewhere far below, in the great hall perhaps, the faint sounds of servants stirring, building up the fires that have burned low. Through the night, there are no servants coming to wake you. Not immediately, for you are a knight, yes, but perhaps not of the highest rank, not wealthy enough for such luxury, and so you must rise yourself, slowly, reluctantly, pushing back the heavy blankets, feeling immediately the sharp bite of cold air against your skin. You sleep in your undergarments, a long woolen shirt, reaching to your knees, because to sleep naked would be to invite death, from the cold, from the damp, from the illnesses that lurk everywhere. In medieval winter, pneumonia, bronchitis, consumption. These are constant threats, constant companions. Throughout the dark months, sitting up now, you swing your legs over the edge of the bed, and your feet touch the stone floor. Even through the rushes, even through your woolen hose, you feel the cold, seeping upward, through the solace of your feet, into your ankles, your calves. This cold will stay with you all day long, for you will never be truly warm. Not until summer returns. Months away, so many months away, you stand slowly, stiffly, for your joints ache, from the cold, from the damp, from sleeping on that unforgiving mattress. You are perhaps 30 years old, but you feel older, much older, for medieval life ages a person quickly, relentlessly, and winter accelerates this aging. With every frozen morning, every painful movement, across the chamber, on a wooden chest, your clothes await, your outer tunic, your hose, your leather belt and boots, all of them cold, stiff from the freezing air. You must dress yourself, layer upon layer, for warmth, for survival, for dignity. First, you pull on additional hose, thick woolen leggings, that tie at your waist, then a second woolen shirt, heavier than the first, then your tunic, made of wool, always wool, for wool retains warmth, even when wet, even when frozen. This tunic reaches past your knees, and is belted at the waist, with a leather belt that holds your small eating knife, your only utensil. For every meal, the fabric is rough, undyed perhaps, or dyed a muddy brown, from walnut hulls or oak bark, and it scratches against your skin, constantly reminding you of its presence, of its weight. You would not survive this constant discomfort, this itching, this heaviness, day after day, for you are accustomed to soft cotton, to synthetic fibers, to clothes that barely touch your skin. Over this, you will eventually don your knight's attire, But not yet. Not in the chamber. For now you must attend to the morning necessities, the private functions that even knights must perform. In the corner of your chamber sits a wooden chamber pot, and you approach it now reluctantly, for even this simple act is uncomfortable in winter. The pot is cold, the seat rim, if there is one, freezing to the touch, and you must bare yourself, expose yourself to the bitter air. For these brief, vulnerable moments, the smell rises, sharp and acidic, for the pot has not been emptied since yesterday evening, and there is no one to empty it now. In these early morning hours, you will carry it yourself, later, down the winding stone stairs, to the garderobe shaft, the castle's waste disposal, a hole in the outer wall, where everything falls down, down, into the moat below, or onto the rocks, where it freezes and accumulates. Throughout winter, this is undignified, yes, but this is life. This is survival. In medieval winter, where there are no flush toilets, no indoor plumbing, no privacy, no comfort, only necessity and endurance, you would not survive. This lack of sanitation, this exposure to waste, to disease, to the constant threat of infection, from the simplest cut, the smallest wound, for there are no antibiotics, no antiseptics, no understanding of germs or bacteria, or how disease spreads. There is only faith and prayer and hope that you will survive another day, another week, another winter. The light is growing now, very slowly, seeping through the cracks, around the wooden shutters that cover your narrow window. You move toward it, your boots now on your feet, stiff leather boots, lined perhaps with wool, if you are fortunate, and you push open the shutters, just slightly, just enough to see the world outside is white, blindingly white, beneath a gray sky. Snow covers everything, the Bailey courtyard below, the outer walls, the rooftops of the village, beyond the castle gates. The snow is deep, perhaps 2 feet, perhaps more, and it is still falling, soft flakes drifting down, endlessly, silently, adding to the burden that winter places. Upon this land you can see your breath, even more clearly now, in the pale morning light, and you can see, far below, tiny figures moving, servants crossing the courtyard, their dark cloaks stark against the white snow. They are carrying wood, always carrying wood, for the fires must be fed constantly, throughout winter, or everyone will freeze, everyone will die. The wind bites at your face, even in these few moments of looking outside, and you close the shutters again, quickly, securing the wooden latch, shutting out the view, the cold, the reminder of what lies beyond these walls, beyond where the peasants live, in their tiny cottages, with even less protection, less food, less hope of surviving. Until spring, you turn back to your chamber, and you notice now what you could not see in the darkness before. The moisture on the walls has frozen in places, creating delicate patterns of ice crystals, beautiful perhaps, but deadly, for they signal how cold it truly is, how little these stone walls protect you from winter's grip. Your hands are cold, your fingers stiff, and you blow on them, rubbing them together, trying to restore some feeling, some warmth. But it is temporary, so temporary, for the cold always returns, always wins. In the end, you would not survive this constant cold, this never-ending battle to stay warm, to maintain your body temperature. For you are accustomed to heated homes, to warm cars, to jackets designed with modern insulation. And here, there is none of that, none. You would develop frostbite within days, perhaps hypothermia within a week, and you would succumb to pneumonia or influenza or any of a dozen winter diseases that claimed so many lives. In these dark centuries, now you must leave your chamber, descend the stairs, and seek warmth, seek food, seek fellowship in the great hall below. But even this short journey is fraught with danger, with difficulty. In medieval winter, the door to your chamber is heavy oak, bound with iron, and it creaks loudly on its iron hinges. As you pull it open, the corridor beyond is darker even than your chamber, lit only by one or two flickering torches mounted in iron brackets. Along the stone walls, these torches provide little light and less warmth. They are made of bundled rushes, soaked in tallow, animal fat, and they smoke constantly, filling the corridor with a thick, acrid haze that stings your eyes and catches in your throat. You breathe shallowly, trying to avoid the worst of the smoke, but it is everywhere, inescapable, part of life. In a medieval castle, in winter, when every possible source of light and warmth is employed, regardless of the cost, to lungs, to eyes, to health, you would not survive. This constant smoke inhalation, this exposure to burning animal fat, to partially combusted materials, for you are accustomed to electric lights, to clean air, to homes without smoke, and your lungs would rebel, would fill with fluid, would develop chronic infections that would shorten your life dramatically, painfully. The floor beneath your feet is stone, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, but uneven, treacherous, especially in the dim light. You walk carefully, one hand trailing along the cold stone wall, for guidance, for balance, for there are no railings here, no safety measures. If you fall, if you twist your ankle, if you break a bone, there is no hospital, no emergency room, no surgery, only pain and hope, and perhaps a barber surgeon who might set the bone or might make it worse, much worse. The stairs, when you reach them, spiral downward, narrow stone steps, worn concave from generations of use. They are steep, these stairs, and dark, so dark, with only occasional, narrow arrow slits, allowing in the faintest winter light. You descend slowly, very slowly, your hand on the central stone pillar that supports the spiral, feeling your way, step by step. By step, the cold increases as you descend, for heat rises, what little heat exists, and the lower levels of the castle are colder still than your chamber above. Down here, near the ground, the stones hold the deep chill of earth and winter. A chill that never leaves, never relents. From October until May, you can hear voices now, echoing up. From below, the sounds of the castle, coming to life. Servants shouting, dogs barking, somewhere a baby crying. The clatter of pots and dishes from the kitchens, the crackle of fires being fed. All of this mingles into a dull roar that grows louder as you descend further into the heart of castle life. Finally, you emerge into the great hall, and here at least there is warmth, or the promise of warmth, from the massive fireplace that dominates one wall. The fire burns brightly now, freshly fed by the servants who rose in the dark hours before dawn to ensure that the Lord and his household would wake to warmth, or something approximating warmth. The Great Hall is a vast space, perhaps 60 feet long, 30 feet wide, with a high ceiling, supported by wooden beams, now blackened with soot from countless fires, countless winters. The walls are stone, of course, hung with tapestries, large woven scenes, depicting hunting, warfare, religious themes. These tapestries serve a dual purpose. Decoration, yes, but more importantly, insulation, creating a small barrier of air and fabric between the cold stone and the room's interior. Still, despite the fire, despite the tapestries, despite the body heat of dozens of people who sleep here nightly, on the rushes, scattered across the floor, the Great Hall is cold, perhaps 50 degrees, perhaps less, cold enough that you can still see your breath, cold enough that you pull your cloak tighter around yourself and move closer to the fire. The fire itself is enormous, burning logs as thick as a man's torso in a fireplace large enough to stand inside. The flames leap and dance, casting flickering shadows across the hall, and the heat, when you stand close, is almost unbearable, scorching your face, your hands, while your back remains cold, always cold. This is the medieval reality. One side roasting, one side freezing, never comfortable, never balanced, never right. You would not survive. This inefficient heating, this waste of resources, this constant discomfort, for you are accustomed to even temperatures, to thermostats, to climate control, and your body would rebel, would struggle to regulate its temperature. You would catch cold repeatedly, develop chilblains on your fingers and toes, suffer from the constant thermal shock of moving from extreme cold to intense heat and back again around the hall. Others are gathering, fellow knights, men-at-arms, servants of higher rank, all coming for the morning meal. Such as it is, in deep winter, they stand in small groups near the fire, or sit at the long wooden tables that run the length of the hall. Their faces are ruddy from the cold, from the fire, from the harsh winter air, and their breath mingles with the smoke, creating a haze. Throughout the hall, everyone is bundled in layers of wool, in cloaks and mantles, even indoors, even near the fire. For the cold is relentless, pervasive, and no one is ever truly warm. They stamp their feet, rub their hands, blow on their fingers, constantly moving, constantly trying to generate warmth, to maintain circulation, to survive. The smell in the hall is overwhelming, a mixture of smoke, unwashed bodies, damp wool, dogs, for there are always dogs, lounging near the fire, and the rushes underfoot, which are strewn with food scraps, bones, and worse. These rushes are changed only occasionally, perhaps once a month, perhaps less often in winter, when fresh rushes are hard to obtain, and so they decay slowly, creating a mulch of organic matter that squelches beneath your boots and releases unpleasant odors with every step. You would not survive. This lack of hygiene, this acceptance of filth as normal, for you are accustomed to daily showers, to deodorant, to clean floors, to sanitize spaces, and here there is none of that, none. Your immune system, unprepared for such assault, would fail. You would sicken quickly from any number of diseases that thrive in such conditions: dysentery, typhoid, plague. These are not abstract threats, not historical curiosities. They are real and present and deadly, especially in winter, when bodies are weakened by cold, by hunger, by the struggle to simply survive. The morning meal is announced by the servants who begin laying out the food, such as it is, on the long tables. You take your place according to your rank, for everything in medieval life is determined by rank, by hierarchy, by your position in the great chain of being that stretches from God down through king and nobles to knights like yourself, and further down to peasants, to servants, to the poor who have nothing and are nothing. The table before you is bare wood, scrubbed perhaps, but stained with the remnants of countless meals. The surface is rough, pitted, and you place your hands upon it, feeling the texture, the cold of the wood. For even here, near the fire, the table is cold, absorbing the chill from the air around it. You have no plate, no fork, no spoon. Knights eat with their hands and with their personal knife, the one you carry on your belt. For most meals, food is served on thick slices of stale bread, called trenchers, which soak up the juices, the sauces, and are eaten at the end, or given to the poor, or to the dogs. Nothing is wasted. In winter, when food is precious and scarce. This morning, the servants bring bread and ale. This is the standard breakfast, the only breakfast. Throughout winter, there is no meat, no eggs, no butter. Those are luxuries reserved for the Lord's table or for feast days. And this is not a feast day. This is ordinary. This is survival. The bread is dark, dense, made from rye or barley, or a mixture of grains. It is hard, requiring strong teeth to tear it apart, and it tastes bland, slightly sour, for the grain may be partially spoiled, may contain ergot fungus, which causes hallucinations, convulsions, death. But there is no way to know, no way to test, and so you eat. and hope, and pray that this bread will nourish you and not poison you. You would not survive this contaminated food, this lack of safety, for you are accustomed to FDA regulations, to expiration dates, to food that is safe and clean and inspected. And here there is none of that. You would eat and sicken, perhaps die, from ergotism, from food poisoning, from any number of bacterial infections that lurk in poorly stored, poorly prepared medieval food. The ale is served in wooden cups, and it is weak, very weak, for strong ale is too expensive, too precious, for ordinary breakfast. This ale is made from the second or third brewing, from the same grains, used again and again, until they yield only the faintest flavor, the slightest hint of fermentation. But it is safer than water, for the brewing process kills some of the disease that lurks in medieval water, in wells, in rivers, in cisterns. And so you drink gratefully, warming your hands on the wooden cup before lifting it to your lips. The taste is musty, flat, barely alcoholic, but wet, and that is enough. That is everything. In this moment, you drink deeply, feeling the liquid slide down your throat, settle in your stomach, providing minimal nutrition, minimal warmth, but something, at least something, around you. Others eat in silence, for there is little joy in this meal, little to celebrate. It is fuel, nothing more. Fuel to sustain you through the long day ahead, through the work, the training, the duties that being a knight requires, even in winter, especially in winter, when every task is harder, colder, more dangerous. The great hall grows louder now, as more people arrive, as conversations begin, as dogs fight over scraps that fall from the tables. The smoke from the fire grows thicker, stinging your eyes, and you blink repeatedly, trying to clear them. But the irritation remains constant, unavoidable. You finish your bread, your ale, and you remain seated, for there is no hurry, nowhere to go. Not yet. The day stretches before you, long and cold, and you must conserve your energy, your warmth, for what lies ahead. You think about the modern person, the 21st century individual. Transport here, to this hall, to this moment. They would not survive, not even this breakfast. They would choke on the bread, gag on the ale, recoil from the smells, the smoke, the filth. They would flee back to their chamber, or try to flee. But there is nowhere to go, nowhere safe, nowhere warm. In medieval winter, there is only endurance, only acceptance, only the slow passage of time, until spring. If spring comes, if you survive after the meal, you must attend to your duties, for you are a knight, and winter does not excuse you from service, from training, from maintenance of your equipment, your weapons, your armor. All of this requires constant attention, constant work, especially in the damp cold that causes rust, corrosion, decay. You leave the great hall, wrapping your heavy woolen cloak around your shoulders, pulling up the hood against the cold. that waits outside, for you must cross the Bailey courtyard to reach the armory, where your equipment is stored, where you must inspect it, oil it, repair it, prepare it for whatever service the Lord may require. The door to the courtyard is massive, reinforced with iron bands, and when the servants push it open, the cold rushes in like a living thing, a wave of freezing air that takes your breath away, steals the warmth from your face, your hands immediately, instantly. You step outside into the snow, and your boots sink several inches deep. The snow is fresh, powdery, and it swirls around you as the wind gusts across the open courtyard. The wind here is fierce, unimpeded by trees, by buildings, for castles are built for defense, not shelter, and the Bailey is open, exposed, a killing ground in times of war, and a frozen wasteland. In winter, the cold is indescribable. It penetrates every layer of clothing, every fiber, reaching your skin. Within moments, you pull your cloak tighter, but it does little, for wool, even thick wool, cannot stop this kind of cold, this bitter, bone-deep cold that is common throughout medieval European winters. You would not survive this exposure, this sudden shift from the relative warmth of the hall to the brutal cold of outdoors. Your body, accustomed to gradual transitions, to heated cars, to climate-controlled spaces, would go into shock. Your fingers would go numb within minutes. Your toes. Shortly after, frostbite would set in, quickly, permanently damaging your extremities, and there would be no treatment, no rewarming protocols, no medical intervention, only pain and loss and disfigurement. The courtyard is busy. Despite the cold, despite the snow, servants hurry from building to building, carrying wood, carrying water, carrying supplies. Their faces are hidden beneath hoods and scarves, but you can see their hunched postures, their quick shuffling steps, everyone moving as fast as possible to minimize time in the cold. Near the well, in the center of the courtyard, several servants struggle to draw water. The well is partially frozen, the rope stiff, the bucket heavy with ice. They work in silence, their breath rising in great white clouds, and you watch them for a moment, grateful that this is not your task, not your burden, though you know that as a knight you have other burdens, equally heavy, equally cold. You cross the courtyard, your boots crunching through the snow, leaving deep tracks that will fill again within the hour as the snow continues to fall, to accumulate. The armory is housed in a small stone building against the inner wall, and you push open the heavy wooden door, stepping inside, out of the wind, but not out of the cold. The armory is dark, lit only by narrow slits high in the walls, and what little light filters through is gray, weak, barely sufficient to see by. You can make out the shapes of weapons hanging on the walls, swords, axes, maces, spears, all carefully arranged, and below them, on wooden stands, suits of armor, helmets, shields, all the equipment. OF war. Of knighthood, everything is cold. So cold. The metal of the weapons, the armor, is painful to touch, for it holds the cold, intensifies it, draws heat from your fingers instantly. You must wear gloves, thick leather gloves, even to handle your own sword, your own equipment. You approach your armor, standing on its wooden frame, and you inspect it carefully, looking for rust, for damage, for any sign of deterioration. The mail is relatively intact. The small iron rings, linked together, thousands of them, forming a shirt that hangs to your knees. But there is rust, yes, always rust, at the joints, where moisture collects, where the iron is exposed to damp air, to breath, to sweat. You take out a small flask, olive oil, fish oil perhaps, or rendered fat, and you begin the tedious work of oiling each section of the mail. The oil is thick, nearly solid, from the cold, and you must warm it between your palms before it will flow, before it will penetrate. The rust, the corrosion, this work takes hours, many hours, and your hands grow cold, then numb, then painful, from the repetitive motion, from the cold metal, from the freezing air. You blow on your fingers repeatedly, trying to restore feeling, warmth. But it is temporary, so temporary you would not survive this monotonous labor, this painful, freezing work, for you are accustomed to heated workshops, to power tools, to work that is efficient, comfortable, safe. And here there is none of that. Here there is only cold metal, numb fingers, and the knowledge that this must be done every day, or your armor will fail, will rust through, will break when you need it most, when your life depends upon it. Around you, other knights, other men-at-arms, perform similar tasks. They work in silence, mostly, for talking requires breath, warmth, energy. That is better conserved, better used, for the work itself. Occasionally someone curses softly when a tool slips, when fingers fumble, when the cold becomes too much to bear. But mostly, there is only the sound of metal on metal, of oil being applied, of men breathing in the cold dark. Of the armory, the morning passes slowly, so slowly, measured not by clocks, for there are no clocks, but by the gradual lightening of the gray sky, visible through the high slits, and by the growing ache in your hands, your back, your shoulders, from bending over, from working in this uncomfortable position on this cold stone floor. Eventually, a servant arrives with the midday meal, a small portion of bread and ale, brought around to those who work in the outlying buildings. You accept it gratefully, setting aside your work, flexing your fingers, trying to restore circulation, warmth. You eat slowly, savoring each bite, for there is little else to look forward to. In this long winter day, the bread is the same as breakfast, dark, dense, hard, and the ale is the same, weak, flat, unsatisfying. But you consume it all, every crumb, every drop, for you need the energy, the sustenance, to continue working, to survive, until evening, until supper, until sleep. After the midday meal, you return to your work. But now there is a new task, for the Lord has requested that the knights practice their combat skills in the courtyard, despite the snow, despite the cold. For enemies do not wait for good weather, for comfortable conditions, and knights must be ready, always ready, to fight, to defend, to kill. If necessary, you don your armor now. The mail shirt, heavy, so heavy, perhaps 30 pounds, of iron rings, settling under your shoulders, pressing down, constricting your breath. The metal is freezing, even through your thick woolen undergarments, even through the padded gambeson that you wear beneath. For protection, for insulation, the cold seeps through immediately, touching your skin, making you gasp, making you shiver uncontrollably over the mail. You fasten your surcoat, a long sleeveless garment of heavy wool, bearing your coat of arms, your identity. This provides some additional warmth, some protection from the wind. But not enough, never enough. You are cold, so cold, and you have not even stepped outside yet. Your helmet is next, a simple steel kettle hat, or perhaps a more enclosed helm, depending on your wealth, your rank. The metal is painfully cold, against your forehead, your scalp, even through the padded coif that you wear beneath. You can feel the cold radiating into your skull, creating a headache that will worsen throughout the afternoon. Finally, you take up your shield, wooden, covered with leather, bearing your arms, and your sword, belted at your waist. The sword is cold. The grip, even wrapped in leather, draws warmth from your hand, through your glove. You flex your fingers around the hilt, testing your grip, knowing that, in the cold, your movements will be slower, clumsier, more dangerous. You step outside, back into the courtyard, and the cold hits you even harder now, for you are weighed down by armor, unable to move quickly, unable to generate the body heat that movement provides. The snow has stopped temporarily, but the wind continues, whipping across the bailey, finding every gap in your armor, every opening, every vulnerability. Other knights gather, perhaps a dozen, all similarly armed, all equally cold, all equally miserable, but disciplined, obedient. For this is duty. This is service. This is what knights do. Even in winter, especially in winter, when the body must be kept strong, ready, despite the cold, despite the hardship. The master-at-arms, an older knight, scarred and weathered, shouts instructions. His voice is rough, hoarse, from years of shouting, from breathing cold air, from winter after winter, of this same training. He directs you to pair off, to practice sword work, shield work, the fundamental skills that keep knights alive. In battle, you face your partner, a younger knight, perhaps 20 years old, eager still, not yet worn down by years of this. You raise your sword, your shield, settling into the familiar stance, feet apart, knees bent, weight balanced, and you begin the practice swords, air blunted, but heavy, still capable of causing injury, bruising, broken bones. If a blow lands poorly, you swing, and your partner blocks, the impact reverberating up your arm, jarring your shoulder. You step back, reset, and he swings, and you block, feeling the shock through your shield, through your arm, into your body. This continues for what feels like hours, back and forth, attacking, defending, moving through the snow, which makes footing treacherous, uncertain. Several times, you slip, nearly fall, and only your armor, your instincts, save you from falling completely into the snow, where you would struggle to rise, weighed down by 30 pounds of iron. Your breath comes hard, ragged, each inhalation burning your throat, your lungs, for the air is so cold, so dry, it hurts to breathe deeply. You can feel sweat forming beneath your armor, beneath your layers, despite the cold. For this work is exhausting, demanding, and the sweat is dangerous. For when you stop moving, when the training ends, the sweat will freeze against your skin, drawing heat from your body, potentially causing hypothermia, sickness, death. You would not survive this combat training, this physical exertion, in such cold. For you are accustomed to climate-controlled gyms, to workout clothes designed to wick moisture, to showers and changing rooms. And here there is none of that. You would collapse within minutes from the exertion, from the weight, from the cold. Your lungs would rebel, perhaps develop exercise-induced asthma, or worse, and you would lie in the snow, unable to rise, unable to continue, finished, defeated by conditions that medieval knights endured every winter day. Finally, after perhaps 2 hours, the master-at-arms calls a halt. The knights stagger to the sides of the courtyard, leaning against walls, gasping for breath. You can see the steam rising from every body, from every gap in armor, as body heat meets frozen air, creating clouds that hang in the still air. Before dissipating, slowly your arms ache, your legs tremble, your chest heaves, and you are both freezing and sweating simultaneously. A miserable combination that defines medieval winter training. You want nothing more than to remove your armor, to sit by a fire, to rest, but there is no rest yet. Not yet, for the afternoon is not over, and there are still duties, still tasks to complete. As the afternoon wears on, the sky darkens, though it is barely past 3 o'clock by modern reckoning. Winter days are short, so short in Northern Europe, and darkness comes early, quickly, bringing with it even colder temperatures, even more dangerous conditions. You return to the armory to remove your armor, to hang it carefully on its stand. You must oil it again now, while your fingers still have some feeling, for later they will be too cold, too stiff to manipulate. The small buckles, the leather straps that hold the armor together. Your surcoat is damp, with sweat, with melted snow, and it steams slightly in the cold air. You leave it hanging to dry. though it will likely freeze before it dries, becoming stiff, rigid, unwearable, until it thaws again. This is normal. This is expected. And tomorrow you will wear it, frozen or not, for there is no alternative, no spare, no replacement. You make your way back across the courtyard to the great hall where the evening meal is being prepared. The smell of cooking reaches you, even in the cold, a rich, meaty smell that makes your stomach clench with hunger, for you have eaten little today, only bread and weak ale, and your body craves sustenance, warmth, food. Inside the hall, the fire has been built up again, roaring now, filling the vast space with flickering light and blessed warmth. You move toward it, drawn like a moth to flame, standing as close as you dare, feeling the heat on your face, your hands, while your back remains cold, damp, from the snow, from the sweat that has soaked through your inner layers. Others gather, as before, the household assembling for the main meal of the day. This is supper, the most substantial meal, when meat might be served, when ale flows more freely, when there is a brief respite from the cold, the work, the harshness of winter survival. You take your place at the table, and the servants begin to serve. Tonight there is pottage, a thick stew of vegetables and grains, with small pieces of meat, pork perhaps, or mutton, adding flavor, if not much substance. The pottage is served in wooden bowls, and it is hot, blessedly hot, steam rising, carrying the smell of onions, of turnips, of herbs, rosemary perhaps, or thyme, grown in the castle garden, in summer, and dried for winter use. You have no spoon, and so you drink the pottage from the bowl, lifting it to your lips, feeling the heat against your cold skin, tasting the rich, savory flavor, feeling the warmth spread through your chest, your stomach, your limbs. This is the best moment of the day. This warmth, this food, this brief, temporary comfort, the meat pieces you fish out with your fingers or with your knife, and you chew them slowly, for they are tough, gristly, from an old animal, but meat nonetheless, precious meat that provides protein, strength, heat. Everything is consumed, every drop of broth, every scrap of meat, for nothing is wasted. Nothing can be wasted. In winter, when food stores are dwindling, when spring is still months away, there is bread too. More bread. Always bread. But this evening bread is softer, fresher, made from better flour, wheat perhaps, mixed with rye, and there is even a small amount of butter, precious butter, made from the diminishing milk of the few cows kept alive through winter. Most of the cattle were slaughtered in autumn, for there is not enough fodder to feed them all through the winter months, and so only breeding stock remains, producing little milk, from which this precious butter is made. You smear the butter on your bread, and it melts slightly from the warmth of the bread, and you eat slowly, savoring every bite, every taste, For who knows what tomorrow will bring? Tomorrow there might be only hard bread again, only weak ale, only the gnawing hunger that is common in late winter, when supplies run low, when the next harvest seems impossibly far away around you. Others eat with similar intensity, similar focus. There is conversation, yes, but quiet, subdued. For everyone is tired, everyone is cold, everyone is focused on the food, on getting warm, on surviving. Another day, another night, you would not survive. This food scarcity, this constant hunger, for you are accustomed to 3 full meals, to snacks between meals, to food that is abundant, varied, always available. And here there is none of that. Here there is pottage, and bread, and occasionally meat, and that is all. You would lose weight rapidly, dangerously, your body consuming its own muscle, its own fat, trying to stay warm, trying to survive, and you would weaken, become susceptible to disease, to infection, to the many dangers that claimed so many lives. In medieval winters, after supper, there is a brief period of leisure, if it can be called that. Some nights remain by the fire, talking quietly, mending equipment, sharpening weapons. Others retire to their chambers, to sleep, for there is little else to do. In winter evenings, when darkness falls, at 4 o'clock, and the night stretches, long and cold, until dawn, you choose to remain by the fire, for your chamber is cold, so cold, and here at least there is warmth, there is light, there is the presence of others, which provides some comfort, some company. In the long dark of winter, a servant brings more ale, stronger ale now, evening ale, meant to warm, to relax, to ease the aches and pains that everyone carries from the day's labors. You accept a cup gratefully, and you drink, feeling the alcohol working its way through your system, loosening your muscles, dulling your pain, making the cold seem just a little more bearable. The conversation around you is slow, desultory. Topics drift from hunting to past battles to complaints about the cold, about the quality of the food, about when spring might come. No one knows. No one can predict. For there are no weather forecasts, no long-range predictions, only observation and hope and prayer that winter will end eventually, as it always has. In the past, someone mentions the villagers beyond the castle walls, and there is brief discussion of how they must be suffering, even more than those within the castle, for the peasants have almost nothing. They live in tiny cottages, with earthen floors, with thatched roofs that leak, with no glass windows, only wooden shutters that admit cold air through countless gaps. They have little food, less fuel, and no protection from the elements beyond their own thin walls, their own meager fires. Many will not survive this winter. That is understood, accepted, even expected. The old will die. The very young will die. The weak will die. From cold, from hunger, from disease. This is normal. This is the way of the world, and there is nothing to be done about it. Nothing that can be done, for resources are limited, and survival, even for the privileged, even for knights and nobles, is not guaranteed. You would not survive as a peasant, as a villager. In medieval winter, you would not survive, even as a knight, but as a peasant, you would have no chance. None at all. Within weeks, perhaps days, you would succumb to starvation, to exposure, to disease. Your body, soft and weak from modern life, would fail quickly, decisively, and you would become another statistic, another unmarked grave, another victim of winter's brutal, indiscriminate culling. The fire burns lower, and servants add more logs, large logs, that will burn through the night, providing warmth for those who sleep here in the hall, on the rushes, on the floor. For not everyone has a chamber. Not everyone has private space. Most of the household sleeps here, in the great hall, wrapped in their cloaks, lying on the filthy rushes, with the dogs, with the cold, with the smoke that never fully dissipates. You watch them, these men-at-arms, these servants, as they prepare for sleep. They spread their cloaks on the floor. They lie down. They curl into balls, trying to conserve warmth, trying to protect their vital organs from the cold that will intensify as the night deepens, as the fire burns lower, as the temperature drops further and further. You are fortunate. You have a chamber. You have a bed, however uncomfortable. You have walls. Around you, privacy, relative warmth. And so you rise reluctantly from the fire, and you make your way back through the hall, toward the stairs, toward your chamber, toward sleep. The journey back to your chamber is familiar now, but no less treacherous. In the dark, the torches have burned lower, and some have gone out, leaving long stretches of complete darkness, where you must feel your way along the wall, up the spiral stairs, counting the steps, remembering the turns, hoping you do not trip, do not fall. Finally you reach your door, and you push it open, stepping into your small chamber, which is somehow even colder now than it was this morning. The fire that burns in the great hall does not reach here, and the stone walls have absorbed the day's cold, holding it, radiating it into the small space. You close the door behind you, and you stand for a moment in complete darkness, for there is no light here, no candle, for candles are expensive, precious, saved for important occasions, for reading, for work that requires close attention, not for simply preparing for sleep. You undress by feel, by memory, removing your outer tunic, your belt, your boots. You leave on your inner layers, your woolen shirt, your hose, for to sleep naked would be to invite death. From the cold, you keep your clothing on, for warmth, for survival, accepting the discomfort, the itching, the smell, for these are nothing compared to the alternative. You climb into bed, pulling the heavy blankets over yourself, piling them high, creating weight that helps trap what little warmth your body generates. But even so, you are cold. Your feet are cold. Your hands are cold. Your nose is cold. And you curl into a ball, tucking your hands under your arms, trying to warm them, trying to warm yourself. Outside, the wind howls, louder now. In the full darkness of night, you can hear it, whistling through gaps, around the shutters, around the door. You can feel it, cold drafts, moving through the chamber, touching your face, your exposed skin, reminding you that winter surrounds you, that winter is inescapable, that winter will not release you until it chooses, until it is satisfied. Sleep comes slowly, fitfully, for you are uncomfortable, cold, and your mind refuses to settle. It wanders through the day's events, through tomorrow's anticipated hardships, through memories of past winters, of friends who did not survive, of the constant, relentless struggle. That is life. In medieval Europe, in the 14th century, in winter you drift, finally, into a light sleep. But it is not restful, not peaceful. You wake repeatedly, from the cold, from stiffness, from the need to shift position on the uncomfortable mattress. Each time you wake, you are aware of the cold, the dark, the silence, broken only by the wind and the occasional sound of the castle settling, of timbers creaking, of distant doors opening and closing as others move through the night. On their own business, you would not survive. This sleep deprivation, this constant waking, this inability to rest properly, for you are accustomed to comfortable mattresses, to warm bedrooms, to uninterrupted sleep of 7 or 8 hours. And here you get, perhaps 4 or 5 hours of broken, uncomfortable rest, night after night, week after week, month after month, and the exhaustion accumulates, wearing you down, weakening you, making you vulnerable to everything that threatens. In medieval winter, in the deepest part of the night, you wake suddenly from a sound, a scream perhaps, distant, muffled, from somewhere else, in the castle, or from the village beyond. It is not uncommon to hear such sounds. In the night, people die. In winter, regularly, from cold, from disease, from accidents, from violence, and sometimes their final moments are loud, are audible to those who lie awake. In the darkness you listen for a moment, but the sound does not repeat, and so you try to settle back into sleep. But now you are fully awake, and your mind begins to work, begins to worry about all the dangers that surround you, that threaten you. Every day, every night, disease is constant, ever present. In medieval Europe, tuberculosis, pneumonia, influenza, these are common killers, taking lives throughout winter. When bodies are weak, when resistance is low, when cold and hunger create perfect conditions for infection, for contagion, for death, there are no antibiotics, no vaccines, no understanding of disease prevention, beyond vague notions of bad air, of miasma, of humoral imbalance. If you fall ill, you are treated with bloodletting, with herbal remedies of doubtful efficacy, with prayers and hope and little else. Most who sicken seriously do not recover. They linger for days or weeks, growing weaker until they die, and their bodies are wrapped in cloth and buried in the frozen ground with minimal ceremony. For death is common, unremarkable, expected. You think about the modern person, transport, to this time, to this place. They would panic, surely, when they realized that there is no hospital, no doctor, no emergency services, nothing between them and death, except luck, and perhaps a strong constitution. But most modern people do not have strong constitutions. They have been sheltered, protected, vaccinated, medicated all their lives, and their immune systems, unprepared for medieval diseases, would fail catastrophically. Quickly, you would die, probably within the first month, from some illness, some infection that your body has never encountered, that it cannot fight. You would die, coughing blood, or burning with fever, or shivering with ague, and there would be nothing anyone could do. You would simply be gone. Another corpse. In a winter full of corpses, this thought is not comforting, but it is realistic. It is honest. And so you accept it, as medieval people accept death, as part of life, as inevitable, as God's will, or fate's design, or simply the way things are. You pull the blankets tighter around yourself, and you close your eyes, and you try again to sleep, to rest, for tomorrow will come inevitably, and with it, more cold, more work, more danger, more struggle to survive. Just one more day in this brutal, unforgiving, medieval winter. The night passes slowly, so slowly, measured not by hours, for you do not know the hours, but by the gradual, imperceptible lessening of darkness, the faint gray light that begins to seep through the cracks around your shutters, signaling that morning is approaching once more. You lie still for a while, reluctant to leave the relative warmth of your blankets, however inadequate, however uncomfortable, for you know that the chamber beyond is colder still, that the day ahead will be much like yesterday, and the day before that, an endless succession of cold mornings, of hard labor, of inadequate food, of constant struggle, until winter finally releases its grip. But lying here accomplishes nothing, and so eventually you force yourself to sit up, to push back the blankets, to swing your legs over the side of the bed, and to stand once more in the freezing chamber, beginning again this daily ritual of survival. Your joints ache, even more than yesterday, for the cold has settled into your bones, into your muscles, creating a deep, persistent pain that never fully goes away. You are perhaps 30 years old, but you feel 50 or 60. For medieval life ages everyone prematurely, and winter accelerates this process with its relentless, Grinding hardship, you dress, again, in the same clothes, for there are no others. You pull on your hose, your tunic, your boots, all of them cold, all of them stiff, and you wrap your cloak around yourself, preparing to face another day, another battle, against the cold, against hunger, against the countless dangers that winter brings. You move to the window, and you open the shutters, just slightly, to look outside. The courtyard below is white, as always, with fresh snow that fell during the night. The sky is gray, heavy with clouds, promising more snow, more cold, more of the same endlessly, monotonously. Through the winter months, you can see the tiny figures of servants already moving, carrying out their duties, tending the fires, drawing water, caring for the animals that must be kept alive. Through winter, these servants rose in darkness, hours before dawn, to begin their work, and they will work until darkness falls again, with only brief breaks for meager meals. This is their life. This is their burden. And they have no choice, no escape, no hope of anything better. You close the shutters, and you turn away from the window, from the view of winter's domain, and you make your way to your door, to the corridor beyond, to the spiral stairs, descending once more into the life of the castle, into another day of medieval winter survival in the great hall. The routine repeats. The fire burns. The servants move about. The knights gather for the morning meal, which is the same as every morning. Bread and weak ale. This is the pattern, the rhythm of winter life, unchanging, predictable, oppressive. In its monotony, you eat mechanically, without pleasure, for the bread is hard, and the ale is flat, and there is no joy in this meal, only necessity, only the need to put something into your stomach, to provide fuel for the day ahead. After eating, you return to your tasks, oiling armor, sharpening weapons, perhaps training again, in the snow, in the cold, repeating yesterday's efforts, knowing that tomorrow you will do the same, and the day after, and the day after that, until winter ends, or until you die, whichever comes first. This is the truth of medieval winter. This is the reality that modern people cannot truly imagine, cannot truly understand. For you live in a world of comfort, of abundance, of safety, where survival is assumed, is guaranteed almost, where winter is an inconvenience, not a threat, where death from cold, from hunger, from disease, is rare, abnormal, shocking. But here, in 14th century Europe, death is common, expected, unremarkable. And winter is when death comes most frequently, most reliably, claiming the old, the young, the weak, and sometimes even the strong. For no one is truly safe. No one is truly protected from winter's power, from winter's cruelty, from winter's absolute, indifferent dominion. The days blend together, one into another, each much like the last. The snow continues to fall, to accumulate, until the drifts are higher than a man, until the world is reduced to shades of white and gray, until the cold is so constant, so pervasive, that you can barely remember what warmth feels like. You develop a persistent cough from the cold air, from the smoke, from the damp. It rattles in your chest, especially at night, keeping you awake, making you wonder if this is the beginning of something worse, of pneumonia perhaps, or consumption, or one of the many other respiratory diseases that flourish in winter's cold embrace. But you cannot rest, cannot recuperate, for there is no rest. In medieval winter, there is only work and duty and the constant effort to stay warm, to find food, to survive, until tomorrow, and the day after, and the week after, stretching out endlessly before you. Others sicken too. You hear of a servant who died in the night, of a villager found frozen in his cottage, of a child who succumbed to fever. These deaths are mentioned briefly, in passing, and then forgotten, for there are too many deaths to mourn them all, too many losses to properly grieve. Life goes on for those who survive, and death is simply part of the pattern of winter, of medieval existence. You would not survive. This acceptance of death, this normalization of tragedy, for you are accustomed to valuing life, to fighting death, to expecting that people will live to old age, barring accidents. And here death comes casually, frequently, to young and old alike, and there is nothing to be done, no way to prevent it, no way to delay it, only acceptance, only resignation, only the hope that you will not be next. As the weeks pass, the food stores begin to run low. The bread becomes coarser, darker, made from inferior grain, mixed with peas, with beans, with anything that can be ground into flour. The portions shrink, the ale grows weaker, and hunger becomes a constant companion, gnawing at your belly, making you irritable, making you weak. The hunting parties that go out return with less game, for the animals too are struggling to survive, are hiding, are dying in the deep snow. The fish in the rivers are harder to catch through holes chopped in the ice, and the stores of salted meat, of preserved fish, of dried vegetables dwindle steadily. Alarmingly, there is talk, quiet talk, of rationing, of reducing the daily portions to make the food last until spring, until the first greens can be harvested, until the livestock can be put to pasture, until life can resume some semblance of normalcy. But spring seems impossibly distant, a dream, a myth, something that perhaps will never come again. You grow thinner. You can feel it in the way your clothes hang, in the prominence of your bones, in the weakness of your limbs. Everyone grows thinner in late winter, burning their body's reserves to stay warm, to stay alive. And there is nothing to replace what is lost. No surplus, no abundance, only the slow, steady decline toward starvation, toward the point where the body simply gives up, simply stops. You would not survive. This food scarcity this slow starvation. For you are accustomed to eating when hungry, to snacking, to having options, to having plenty. And here there is none of that. Here there is only one meal, one small meal per day, and even that is not guaranteed. You would weaken rapidly. Your body would consume its own muscle, its own organs, trying to survive, and you would develop deficiency diseases, scurvy from lack of vitamin C, beriberi from lack of thiamine pellagra, rickets. Your teeth would loosen, your bones would ache, your skin would bruise and bleed, and eventually you would simply fade away, too weak to fight, too depleted to continue. But somehow, impossibly, the days continue, and you continue with them, rising each morning, eating your small portion, performing your duties, training when required, and surviving, one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, one breath at a time. The nights are the hardest, the longest, lying in your cold chamber, unable to sleep properly, listening to the wind, to the sounds of suffering that echo through the castle, the coughing, the crying, the prayers of others who struggle as you struggle to make it through, to see another dawn. You pray sometimes, though you are not particularly devout. You pray for spring, for warmth, for food, for survival. You pray because there's nothing else to do, because prayer is the only action available to you, the only way to feel some sense of control, some hope, however small, however unlikely, that things will improve, that winter will end, that life will get better, and perhaps your prayers are heard, or perhaps it is simply the natural cycle of seasons. But eventually, imperceptibly at first, the days begin to lengthen. The dawn comes slightly earlier. The dusk arrives slightly later. And though it is still cold, still snowing, there is a subtle change in the quality of the light, in the feel of the air, that suggests that spring is not a myth, not a dream, but a reality that will come eventually, if you can just hold on a little longer. One morning, you wake and you realize that you can hear birdsong, faint, distant, but unmistakable. Birds returning from the south, heralding the slow, gradual return of spring. The sound fills you with an emotion you cannot quite name. Relief, perhaps, or hope, or simply the knowledge that you have survived, that you have endured, that winter has not claimed you. As it claimed so many others, the snow begins to melt, slowly at first, and then more rapidly, revealing the muddy earth beneath, revealing the damage that winter has wrought, the broken branches, the collapsed buildings, the bodies of animals that did not survive, that lie frozen where they fell, waiting to be discovered, to be dealt with. The castle comes to life in new ways. People emerge from their chambers, their corners, their hiding places, blinking in the strengthening sunlight, moving more freely, smiling sometimes. For the worst is over. The hardest part is done. They have survived another winter, another test, and spring, blessed spring, is finally arriving. Food becomes slightly more available. As the last stores are opened, as trade resumes with the outside world, as the roads become passable again, merchants arrive with goods, with news, with the promise of better days ahead. And though you are still hungry, still thin, still weak, you are alive. And that is enough. That is everything. You stand in the courtyard one morning in early March, and you feel the sun on your face. Real warmth, genuine warmth, for the first time in months. And you close your eyes, and you simply stand there, absorbing it, grateful for it, marveling at it. For you have survived. You have endured. You have made it through the brutal medieval winter that would have killed any modern person within weeks. But even now, as spring arrives, you know that this is only temporary, only a reprieve. For next winter will come inevitably, bringing with it all the same hardships, all the same dangers, all the same struggle to survive. And you will face it again and again, year after year, until finally, one winter, you do not survive, until finally, you join the countless others who fell before you, claimed by cold, by hunger, by disease, by the relentless, indifferent power of winter. In medieval Europe, this is the reality that modern people cannot imagine, cannot comprehend. For you live in warmth, in abundance, in safety. You have heating systems, and grocery stores, and hospitals. You have vaccines, and antibiotics, and emergency services. You have everything that medieval people lacked, everything that made survival possible, probable, expected. But here, in the 14th century, in the depths of winter, survival is never guaranteed, never easy, never comfortable. It requires constant effort, constant vigilance, constant acceptance of hardship, of suffering, of death. And most modern people, soft from comfort, weak from ease, would not survive, could not survive more than a few days, perhaps a few weeks, before winter claimed them, as it claimed so many throughout those dark, brutal, unforgiving centuries. So rest now, dear listener, in your warm bed, beneath your soft blankets, in your heated home, and be grateful, so grateful, that you live now, in this time, in this age, where winter is mild, where survival is easy, where the cold cannot reach you, cannot harm you, cannot claim your life. Close your eyes and drift away into peaceful sleep, knowing that you are safe, that you are warm, that you are protected from the brutal winters that medieval knights once faced and barely survived. Let yourself relax completely as the images fade, as the cold recedes, as the past releases you back into the comfort of the present, into the warmth of modern life, into the safety of here and now. Sleep well, sleep deeply, and remember, as you drift off, how fortunate you are, how blessed to live in a time when winter is merely an inconvenience, not a mortal threat, not a test of survival, not a season of death. The wind outside your window is only wind. The cold is only cold. And you, unlike those medieval knights, will wake tomorrow warm and safe and alive, sleep now. Sleep peacefully and let the past remain in the past, where it belongs, far away, in those cold, dark, distant, medieval winters that you would never survive. Good night and sleep well.